Hello, the name's Gab. Welcome to Frontlines, equally the most fun and most frustrating game mode in Final Fantasy XIV. Frontlines, and the roulette associated with them, give quite a lot of XP and is actually one of the most efficient daily roulettes from a leveling perspective. This no-nonsense guide will teach you the basics of Frontline, its maps, and some tips on how to get the most out of it. Let's get started, shall we? Frontline is a PvP challenge which engages 3 teams of 24 players against one another, each representing a grand company assigned at random, for a combined total of 72 players duking it out on the battlefield. There are 4 maps for Frontlines: the Borderland Ruins, Seal Rock, the Fields of Glory, and Onsal Hakair, each with their own objectives: secure, seize, shatter, and Dashignandam? This is basically Seize but a little different. I'll get onto how you win these objectives a little later. There are 3 main mechanics which are in play across all maps. The first being Battle High, which is a meter that fills whenever you get an assist or knock out a player. 2 points for the former, 10 points for the latter. Every 20 points on this meter gives a 10% increased damage and healing buff up to a maximum of 100 points or a 50% increase. Beware. If you get knocked out, then you lose half of those points. If you are to take one thing away from this guide, it's this: don't be reckless. If you die at 100 points, not only do you lose 50 points off of your own meter, but you give 10 points to the person who knocked you out, and 2 points to each person that assisted. If done enough times, this can actually swing the match into the opponent's favour. The second is damage modifiers. I'll put a link into the description to give you a more detailed outlook on this, but the main gist of it is not every job takes the same amount of damage or puts out the same amount of damage either, to give some semblance of balance in Frontlines. Simply put, melee jobs take 60% less damage and ranged jobs take 30% less damage, with a couple of jobs dealing 10% less damage, such as Summoner and Scholar, to keep them in line. The third and last common mechanic across maps is the limit break gauge. Limit break is individual to the player and charges at different rates depending on 2 things: the player's job and what position their team is in. Put simply, if your team is in 3rd place, your limit break gauge will charge 1.25 times faster, whereas if you're in 1st place, it will only charge at 0.75 speed. This is to help give the team in last place a little bit of a fighting chance and to potentially get the comeback. Now, onto each of the maps, starting with the Borderland Ruin. This is the simplest map, and in my opinion the most balanced out of the 4. There are 3 victory conditions which I'm going to list in priority order: occupying key locations, slaying monsters, and defeating enemy players. In the centre of the map there will be a set of robots that spawn at around 19, 15, 10:30, 6 and 2 minutes, with a large robot pillar spawning at exactly 10 minutes. Contrary to popular belief though, this isn't the most important, the key locations are. Each base ticks at every 3 seconds and is broken down as follows. One base will give you 1 point every 3 seconds, while each subsequent base doubles the point gain up to all 6 bases giving 32 points every 3 seconds. Now whilst holding 6 bases is highly unlikely, holding 3 is very much possible. And by holding 3 and only getting 1 robot, you're actually getting more points than, say, if you held 1 or 2 points and you went mid and got 2 robots. My point is, and the main tip for this map, is to slightly prioritize points over robots. I'm not saying to ignore them entirely, but don't have all 24 players go up to mid when the time comes. Have about 4 to 6 players stay behind and capture or defend points that might be vulnerable to capping from other teams. This will help you give the edge over the other teams who are all just mindlessly going to mid whenever somebody calls it out. The next map is Seal Rock. There are 2 main objectives here: defeating players and occupying elegant tome lifts. This is one of the most kill-centric maps, simply due to the way that the scoring works here. When a player is defeated, their team loses 5 points and you gain 5 points, whereas occupying the monoliths gives 40, 20 and 200 points over the course of 2 minutes. Given that the amount of points to win is halved compared to other maps being at around 800, defeating players actually becomes the priority here, especially over B-ranked nodes, the triangles. My tip for this map is to not be afraid to leave B-ranked nodes alone. Look for flank opportunities, and see where you can catch players out for some easy points. This can help tip, again, the balance into your favour, even despite the fact that Seal Rock is a relatively unbalanced map overall. The third map is the Fields of Glory. Like the Borderland Ruins, there are 3 objectives: playing monsters, this time it's destroying crystals, occupying key locations, and defeating players. For this map, there's actually quite a lot of verticality and choke points, and I would say that the priority is split between defeating players and destroying the crystals. Like in all maps, defeating players steals 5 points from them. Hey, Future Geb here. That's wrong. Actually, with this map, if an enemy gets a kill on you, they gain 10 points and you lose 5. Back to the video. But the crystals, when destroyed, give out 70 for the small crystals and 300 for the large ones, split out amongst the teams depending on how much damage they did to them. My main tip here is to play to the terrain's advantage. Cut off choke points where crystals are about to spawn and force enemy teams to either run through you or go the other way around, both buying you and your team valuable time. One other tip that isn't really covered all that much is that the crystals themselves are actually not 50% magic resistant. So, for the casters and healers out there, actually, when a crystal has spawned, especially the larger one, focus on deterring enemy players off of the crystal and let your more physically inclined teammates destroy the crystal for you. And the last map is Onsal Hakair. This map is basically the same as Seal Rock, but with one major difference. If you capture a point, you keep it for the whole duration. This means 2 things. 1, A rank and S rank points have a far greater priority than ever. And 2, certain points, such as mid, the bridge, the beach, and the caves, can be a trap. What I mean by this is, since there are some points which converge onto 2 or more teams, these points can stay uncapped for quite some time. The way around this is to keep an eye out for easy caps that you can make, and ones where there is a flanking opportunity. Whilst those points are kept uncapped, you can cap those other points and gain points and keep those points which I've mentioned as sort of a secondary objective when there's no other points to get. Lastly, here are some generalized tips to make your experience a little better in the front line. First off, use sound effects. A lot of players do blindly follow commands given by others. Have a push, fall back, and spawn macro ready. It will really help coordinate your team. At the very least, give them sort of a gentle nudge in the right direction. Next, know your job. Having a good grasp of what your job can and can't do really helps go a long way into winning fights. Whilst each job has its own little quirks, and I may make guides for each job in the future, very broadly speaking, casters are the best at AoE, melees are the best at single target and assassinations, ranged are generally a mix of the two, tanks are great at catching out players and holding points, and lastly, healers are great at dishing out buffs, debuffs, and healing. Finally, enjoy the game mode for what it is. Frontlines by nature are very chaotic, and you're not going to win all of them, so from my point of view, just get the most fun out of them, even if that means not winning. Some games I have lost, but they have been super close, and they've been constantly tense. They have been some of the best matches I've ever done. So seriously, don't think about just winning, think about getting the most fun out of it. And that's it from me. Hope you've learned a thing or two about Frontlines. If you think I've missed anything, or if you have any tips of your own, please do leave them in the comments. Otherwise, if you liked the video, consider subscribing and leaving a like. I also stream over at twitch.tv/GebTheSquare, so if you want to drop by and have a chat, feel free. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Still here, huh? Have a hug from me.